Welcome to Real People, Real Voices. I'm your host, James Jackson.
I'm your co-host, Dr. Wayne Moore.
It's always a pleasure to host with you.
Yes, we're doing what Dr. Kane told us to do.
Yeah,
We're doing the upward bump.
Upward bump,
not the lower bump.
Yeah.
We're doing the upward bump.
So we're moving towards a verbal society.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No
yes.
touch.
Yes.
Welcome to Real People, Real Voices, and we're excited about your being here. We want to thank our sponsors.
Yeah, Lee Cossack and Crawley, Fervent Care Christian Academy, Marion County Public Health Department is with us, and they're doing some work even as we speak in our community. And Al's Modern Clothing and Shoes. So if you need to get ready for church on Sunday morning, go check out Brother Al, and he'll get you straightened out, and tell him I said give you a free pair of shoes in the process.
And we want to thank you for joining us each week. And you can also go to our YouTube channel, WHMB TV 40. Watch this show when it's over, as well as some other shows that you might have missed. Mm-hmm. All kind of great information.
And like us on Facebook.
Like us on Facebook with hundreds of other people who are there.
We have special guests with us today, Dr. David Green of Concerned Clergy and Purpose of Life Church. We also have with us today Antonio Alexander, who's going to be here to talk to us about some things that have transpired in our city that would give us insight on the economic development. And we hope you'll stay tuned to be part of our conversation today.
Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices, and we're joined by President of Concerned Clergy, Pastor David Green.
Dr. Jackson, good to be here with you.
Good to have you all here. And Tony Alexander.
Yes, sir. I'm glad to join you.
Enjoy hearing you host the Concerned Clergy show on Wednesdays.
Well, thank you so much. I enjoy hosting that show.
Yeah, which has been going for many years now.
Many years.
Dr. Green's doing a great job with that group. Continue to pray for his strength as he leads us in certain areas in our community. I think he's doing a fantastic job, and our people need to know that in the community.
And very important topic today, talking about economic development, particularly in the Black community, and some of the numbers that came out of the Concerned Clergy that were revelational. In fact, last year, during a Black Agenda forum that the Concerned Clergy, the BMA, partnered to set that up, was hugely successful. And numbers came out as to how the city of Indianapolis is doing, making sure that we have the right number of Black-owned business, veteran-owned business, minority-owned businesses, and so on, getting a fair share of public money. So kind of talk to us about how the contract system works and why this topic is important.
Well, the city, for 25 years, we've not had a disparity study to look at what's happening in terms of minority businesses, in terms of women, specifically African Americans, et cetera. And so we start with, we need to do this far more often. We can't wait 25 years between taking a look at what the numbers really are. We must do a better job as a city, as a community. I'm hoping that one of the changes that's going to happen is it's going to get codified, that we're going to have a study every 5 years because we have so much work to do. We as African Americans are behind, minorities as a whole are behind. There are many prime contractors who are saying they're making a good faith effort, and then we're not getting our fair share of revenue in terms of economics for creating Black wealth in our community. It's extremely lacking, so we have a lot of work that needs to be done, and it needs to start. Dr. Jackson really was saying we're going to look at this annually, that there are reports shared with the community in terms of how we're doing regarding economics and minorities.
And when this gets straightened out, and I believe it will, because I believe what you monitor and measure improves, is there any possibility to raise the issue of economic reparations for the minority-owned and the Black-owned businesses to go back and say, hey, you know, there were certain percentages that were to be met. Obviously, they were not met, and this is public money. Is that outlandish to recommend or raise the issue of economic reparations? Although I've heard of other reparations around the country for other groups and things like that.
Oh, this is something we're going to have to do. We're going to need some drastic changes in order to accomplish what needs to be done in our community. There are many of us who are discussing set-asides and saying, what does that look like? So, because if we're not intentional, we're not going to get there. We're not going to get there by accident. There are so many systems and traditions that are in place. If we're not intentional, if leadership in our city is not intentional, this will not happen. There are things we're going to have to clearly do, and there will have to be consequences when one doesn't do it in order to get there. I mean, it's going to take a total commitment.
Brother Alexander, after looking at this particular disparity, if I'm right, study, how would you rate it?
Well, I think overall, the City of Indianapolis disparity study, it highlighted a lot of issues that we've known for years within how contracts are being let, the lack of minorities that are getting those contracts. So the disparity study was able to show those items, highlight those items, which is good, and we want to see that from the study. But now we must move to action beyond the study. We must now make the changes so that when we look at the gap between what majority companies are getting, what minority companies are getting, specifically African American companies, we have to close that gap. We have to raise those percentages, and we have to put plans in place in order to do that.
The study came in with about, was it 4 or 5 years?
It was 5 years, calendar years 2014 through 2018.
Okay.
Well, what's interesting, and you all could confirm or debunk this, with regard to those contracts, the black male-owned business is not even in that.
Correct.
And so, if in fact that's the case, what we say or assume that black males who own businesses are getting their fair share.
We can't assume that. Part of what the outcomes from the disparity study reveal is there are a number of contracts, a lot of city money, taxpayer money gets given out, and the city doesn't track. They do not track the demographics to whom the money went to. So we have got to start with, hey, we need to know who are these tax dollars are going to, how many black people are getting paid, how many black males are getting paid, women, Hispanics, etc. But we've got to know that, because when you don't track that data, Dr. Jackson, Dr. Moore, we know what's going on, right? There's a reason why the city has chosen not to track that information. There's a number of contracts that are given out, professional services contracts that do not travel through the Office of Minority Women Development. We have to track those in order to see improvement. We're going to have to be intentional. It's going to require a lot of changes, and some people are going to be uncomfortable, but it's necessary in order to create a greater Indianapolis.
And Alexander, what kind of numbers are we talking about? I see you have some things there with you.
Well, when you're looking at the numbers overall, first of all, the city has a goal of 15, 8, 3, and 1. So that's 15% minority, 8% woman-owned, 3% veteran or disabled, and then 1% veteran. The issue is, one, all of minorities are lumped into one group. So if you kind of go to your earlier question, are African American males getting their a good proportion of the work? Well, absolutely not, because we're not making the 15% as it is. If we were to break down the numbers, which while the disparity study showed those numbers, as the city tracks them, we are not tracking those and making those public on an ongoing basis. Mm-hmm. So if we were to look at the disparity study, blacks, African American businesses are actually getting less than 2%.
1.5%.
Exactly.
And we're talking about upwards of $100 million, aren't we?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that will grow.
Especially with what we're going into now.
Oh, yes. You have billions
and
and billions of dollars coming through here within the next 5 to 6 years. And I think this is an ample time, as Dr. Green suggested, that we need to talk with the right people to make these changes happen. A lot of people don't understand that there are people who get contracts that don't even go through the office of women, and because of the processes that they have dealt with in the past, and those type of situations ought to change. Isn't it strange how this study came out after the election? Not before the election, it came out after the election, which, when I looked at that, when I looked at it and heard about what I saw in the disparity study, it is horrible, not just for blacks, but just for minorities, period. Out of all of the minorities, the Caucasian woman is getting the most dollars out of the disparity study.
So when we come back from break, there a lot of times the pushback is, well, we can't find any black-owned or women-owned businesses to do the job, and therefore they go with other contractors. So I want to address that issue. Certainly we're glad for you all to be here. If you want to stay with us, this is very important as we go forward. Please stay with us. We'll be back after these messages. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices, and we're joined by Dr. David Green, Tony Alexander, the concerned clergy and members of our faith community and leaders. And we want to thank you all for joining us. Also want to thank our sponsors, Lee, Kossel, and Crawley. If you need help, they can help you. Fervent Care Christian Academy, Clean Christian Convenient Child Care, Marion County Public Health Department, and Owls Modern Clothing and Shoes. Just before the break, we touched on a pushback we often hear. When I was on the board of public safety many years ago, that was always something that came up. We can't find any black-owned businesses specifically, although these contracts go to minority business owner, veteran-owned business owners. But particularly when it came to the issue of these kind of contracts, which are generally very large contracts. And as we're talking about this, there are some things I think the city started doing either last year, coming into this year, trying to make sure black-owned businesses can get a piece of the contract and then move on to getting a bigger part of it. But what would you all say to that pushback in the past?
I would say a couple of items. First of all, we've had some great success among minority companies historically here in the city. When you look at the Eskenazi building, the original rebuild of the airport, and what gets lost is often we don't ask what happened to those companies, because a lot of African American companies were a part of that. A lot of them got ran out of business because they didn't get the next sizable project. And so we need to really take a look at, before we say that they're not available, there's a lot of companies who've done quality work in our community that we need to say, where are they now and how do we engage them? Because some of them are frustrated from the process because they have not been engaged, I would say, first of all. Second of all, I would say part of, we need to remember, especially here in Indianapolis, we're a university town. We're surrounded by universities. Not just in Indianapolis, but you go to Lafayette, you got Purdue, Ball State, IU, et cetera. We should be attracting the top 10% of the minority talent that's available to us. We should be able to keep people in Indianapolis as opposed to them feeling like I've got to go to Atlanta, Dallas, some other city in order to get my start, in order to grow my business, because I can't get a fair shake in Indianapolis. It's a tragedy if we don't begin to cultivate a relationship with some of the best talent that we're training. IUPUI is a majority campus. We need to be able to attract the talent and build that talent, build the database, build a connection between what we're growing right here, and they should be staying right here because they're getting opportunities. There's a number of things we could do before we can say we can't find anybody. That's a tough argument for myself. I know we as the Concerned Clergy and the Baptist Minister Alliance have spent the last year or two doing a lot of research in this area, talking to people, so we understand there are people out there that can do the work. We need to be able to have a bridge so that they have an opportunity to be engaged. It's the lack of opportunity is causing a lot of people to say, I need to go somewhere else.
And in all fairness to that, the major contractors only see minorities in this context as subs mainly. For some reason or another, they are very fearful of a prime, a minority prime. And so they really push the idea of, and I'm not going to call any names, but really push the idea of supporting subs. And we need to get the minority community to understand that not only can you be a sub, but you need to start learning how to develop to become a prime. And that's where we get this pushback, where there are no prime minority companies. Well, one reason there's not a prime minority company, you're a major company and you go out and create a company with a woman, which, you know, if you understand what I'm talking about, which begins to undercut and to maneuver around certain things, instead of taking these particular subs and turning them into primes by creating set-asides and apprenticeship programs to where they can grow and to develop, not only in the Black community, but in the Latino community, in any community that we have here. That needs to come back. Many years ago, it was there, but it's almost a taboo now. And I believe it's a taboo because some of these persons who have received set-asides as minorities, they developed good companies, which became companies of competition for those major other companies.
Well, if I can kind of add to that, Pastor Moore, before we can develop the companies, we have to develop the people.
Right.
And what we are lacking is in our majority companies developing Black individuals in leadership roles, in management roles. When you look at company startups, a lot of times that's where they come from. They've worked for a majority company. They've been able to learn and glean from that company. They get experience, and then they take that experience, and then they are able to start their own company.
Right.
That is not what we're seeing. If you look at our majority companies, and if you were to just look at their own diversity efforts within their companies, that is where it's lacking. That is where our business developing is lacking. And in order to change that, while we're waiting on our college grads, we have to be able to have those that are in managerial positions and able to start their own companies.
Let me ask a question. I always ask this question because I believe in local government. What should be our council's role in this? If there is a role, what should be the council's role?
One of the things they do is codify that we're going to have a disparity study every 5 years. I mean, that has to get done. We can't leave it up for a mayor to decide when and if they're going to do it. Because we need to track the results, we need to have expectations, we ought to have goals, we need to know how we're doing against those goals. That needs to get codified.
And currently it's not.
And currently it's not. That's why it took 25 years.
And many of these contracts are coming before committees within the council. When these contracts are coming before the committees, when they're doing their presentations, the council can make sure that there is a plan for diversity and hold them to that plan.
So basically, if I hear you right, Reverend Alexander, council members are not checking that box then.
Is that the
Absolutely
Economic
not.
Development Committee primarily?
Well, primarily, but if you look across all of the committees, each of them have the ability to affect how businesses are benefiting from the city contracts.
And would this be something primary on the agenda for the president of the city council?
You would want it to be. I mean, we need all the counselors in their respective roles. We have a leader of municipal corporations. Well, they're going to have, if you're building a new fire department, a fire station, or a new library, we need the counselors to ask those questions. So it's economic development for sure, because it's going to be a part of a lot of huge things going on in our city. But all the counselors have a role and can help in this effort, and the chief among them is the president.
Yeah, the voice of the people,
The
Bob
voice of-
Bosley.
No, he's not.
Well, his name means voice of the
Well,
people.
my name means something too, but no.
I don't want to get off on that.
I ain't
though.
getting off on that, Jack. I'm just basically saying that.
But I would think that if you have a Nigerian American who is black leading the council, who also believes he will be mayor one day, according to the Indianapolis Star, that this would be a primary issue in his mind.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah,
and
and-
every African-American counselor needs to be in my opinion, held accountable
Right.
for helping raise the question and making sure we get the results. Because now we have the data. The disparity study is there. We know that we're lacking. We know that we're behind. They all have a responsibility, and the president, as the chief among them, should be leading the effort to say we need to fix this.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying.
So are they precluded by the oligarchy? Is
Good question.
they,
Yeah, they
because
are.
I've heard it said that there are a few people who make all the decisions, and then it trickles down to local government. I would hope that's not the case, but we've been talking about this for years. There was a meeting at your church
Right,
a few
right.
years ago. One of our sponsors, Attorney Lee, talked about the importance of vendor contracts.
Right.
And here we are several years later talking about the same thing, while according to the Thrive Indianapolis report, black folks are last when it comes to household median income.
Right.
Number
Absolutely.
one in unemployment, and we got all these black people who are in leadership positions. I don't call them leaders, I call them administrators.
Well, going back to my point, because I'm not going to let this go.
Well, I
We're talking about-
get, I get really passionate.
I know you
when we
do,
start
and I
talking
see it
about
coming up on you there. The voice of the people, and I'm saying that to say this, it's not so much being a voice for people, although that's what it means to his name, but we need action for the people. I mean, to say that you're going to put proposals in to do certain things, there's a proposal in that would create something to help with homicides in the city. Never reacted to that. And so those are things that if you're in a position right now as the president of a council to where you can see what is going on and you don't do anything about it and then have a desire to go to a next level, if you didn't do it at this level, it's very highly unlikely you're going to do it at the next level.
And will not have my support to go to the next level if 4 years from now, we still don't see these numbers moving.
Right.
Because
Exactly.
15%, I think you said, is not a lot. I've always wondered why it has to be 15%. After all these years, it should be 30.
Exactly.
That's why you don't have the studies, but every 25 years.
Yeah, that's a piece of it, and we're going to have to demand changes.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't, if a few people are making a decision, we need to change that room. We need to change who's making those decisions
Right.
because enough is enough, and we need to make changes because we're not getting the 15%. African Americans are not getting the 15%. We're still at 1, maybe 2% on a good year, and that has to change. And if that means changing the people that are in the room, then we need to change the people that are in the room because you need people who are advocating for
And have balance.
African American. Yeah, it's because all we're wanting is what's fair. We're not asking for a handout. We're asking for what is fair. We need to be creating generational black wealth in Indianapolis. And if 5 years from now, the meter has not moved in that area, it's an indictment on all of us. And we have to speak truth and say, we expect this. We expect to see black generational wealth in Indianapolis, that we're creating some millionaires.
And we'll have to have you all back. We're out of time. We'll see you next time.